I've been trying to break away from my chores today to get this written, but promised a friend I would help her move, and then I was caught up watching the Astros game that went from glee at an early scoring spree to boredom as they wouldn't stop scoring, and then to morbid curiosity because they outscored half the NFL teams with no signs of stopping today. But the Astros stopped after 3 touchdowns. I helped the theater prepare for its opening, and now I'm safely back home to talk about the Isle of Dawn. So welcome to Mystara. I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to shine a spotlight on that contested island of adventure. The Isle of Dawn is a rather large island that sits between the continents of Brune and Alphatia, and it's occupied by both the Thyatian and the Alphatian empires. That means the island serves as a sort of a proxy battleground for both empires without either of them having to commit to a full-blown war. Almost half of the land of the island, located in the southern half, is claimed by both sides but controlled by neither. The contested areas is where you can put a ton of adventures because adventurers running around doing heroic stuff there for the empire of their choice has plausible deniability. And plausible deniability is the best kind of deniability. The secret of the island, and it's not much of a secret because it happened so long ago as to be trivia at this point in the plot, is that it was a colony for the Nithian Empire until it vanished from reality for being naughty. The Thyatians on the island weren't as naughty as the ones on the homeland, so instead of vanishing, they just got mind-wiped. Nobody remembers the original Nithians, even the Thyatians who descended from them. One after effect, though, was the region around Adaro is mostly desert, in stark contrast to the rest of the island, which is mostly hills and moors. The island has numerous analogies to Ireland and Wales, aside from the out-of-place region resembling ancient Egypt. This is split between both empires. The islanders are common on both sides of the border, though both empires maintain large garrisons to keep the populations under control and prevent anyone from changing sides. The border between the two empires is heavily built up and garrisoned to the best of their ability, with forts on both sides dotting the landscape. The fact that one empire can't attack without being vulnerable to counterattack somewhere else on the island has largely kept the peace. The wild card in this stalemate is the nation-state of Helsker, which has been under control of both the empires over the years. However, with the recent creation of the Kingdom of Norwald, Helsker's leader, Lord Tsar, has declared his city independent from both nations. Of course, how long this is going to last isn't clear, with both empires interested in retaking the city, but both equally are determined not to let the other claim it first. So Tsar plays both sides against each other and tries not to get stepped on in the process. This is where players can go for all kinds of adventures, trying to keep the city free from outside influence. You've got the twin cities of East and West Portage, which handle most of the trade from the empires going to each other. The cities sit at the narrowest part of the island, so a lot of cargo gets unloaded and hauled to the other by wagon to avoid having to sail around the island. Even smaller ships will be dragged across the 20 or so miles to save time on sailing around the island. East Portage is the better run of the two cities, with West Portage being known for having a large population of thieves and smugglers waiting for large and valuable cargoes to arrive. The largest area on the Alphatian side of the island, at least in terms of size, is the Confederacy of Dunedale, which is actually a democracy of sorts. Alphatia maintains it's a kingdom, but the mostly non-magical population has elected a wizard who serves as their king on a mostly ceremonial basis. He's delegated all but the most important aspects of running the Confederacy to the fighters and thieves that populate the land. Their leader mostly continues with his studies, pausing briefly just to sign any papers that need to be signed and rubber stamp the decisions that the council makes that actually runs Dunedale. On the Thyatian side, the largest region is the Grand Duchy of Westrork. This is centered around Newkirk, which is one of the most heavily fortified locations in Mystara. While the garrison isn't as numerous as people would think, most of the army is scattered across the island in numerous forts. In addition, nearby is Fort Redstone, which has over 10,000 soldiers waiting to be deployed. If Alphatia is going to take the Isle of Dawn, the only way through is to get to Newkirk, and that's so well defended it makes any assault cost prohibitive. One aspect about the Isle of Dawn that is constant on both sides is the corruption of the governments there. This is the same corruption that largely convinced Lord Zal to break away from both empires. Thieves run numerous cities on the island, and smuggling and piracy is rampant. There's little in the way of trade between the empires, so the various towns are left to fend for themselves to get needed supplies, and getting those supplies becomes its own industry. This also means that since the various regions aren't well supervised by imperial officials, that numerous local powers will embezzle as much as possible to enrich themselves. This, of course, is where player characters get involved to either help get the needed supplies to the right towns, or to catch the officials that are stealing from their own people. The entire theme of the island is that of tension, not just between the army garrisons that stare at each other on a daily basis across national borders, but between the towns themselves. Every town is threatened by the opposing empire, as well as the horrors that lurk in the wilderness around them. Undead, lycanthropes, and bandits run rampant in the surrounding countryside, and while there are armies amassed all over the island, they won't do anything to help the local populace. Locals have to worry about getting lost, or else they might find themselves on the wrong side of the border with hostile forces looking for an excuse to terrorize them. So, this situation calls for adventurers. There's a lot of monsters running around, and nobody can be bothered to clean them up. Fremenglaive is under siege by lycanthropes and vampires. Ecto has a whole host of desert-dwelling baddies. There's pirate raids all over the island, and no one is safe. There's the constant chance of military raids across the border. Not enough to start a real fight, but enough to remind the common folk there's an army just across the horizon that wants to conquer them. The party can serve as protectors of the little folk, agents of either government or even the new lords and ladies at the higher levels. There's a lot of unclaimed territory in the Isle that would be perfect for a new domain to open up. The Isle of Dawn perfectly encapsulates the Cold War feel of the 1000 timeline. You've got a wild and unclaimed area large enough for the armies to fight each other while not committing to an actual war. Up and down the island, it resembles the standoff between NATO and the Soviet bloc, with a massive buildup of forces, but neither side willing to make the first move. You've got political leaders more interested in running their own province than the good of the empire, and that leaves large power vacuums across the setting. Now that's going to wrap up the Isle of Dawn. It's one of the most important aspects of Mystara and deserved its own video. In the 1005 timeline I wrote, it handles the bulk of the fighting, and even then the borders don't move much. Mystara does need to keep the Cold War tension in the timeline to maintain the threat to everyone else, because you don't want to stray too far from the theme of your setting, or you're going to lose what attracted people in the first place to it. So remember, until next time, there is no crying in baseball.